Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances of Lord Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to morning Bhagavatam class. This morning we will be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapter 13, verse 21, and the chapter is entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home. We are in the middle of the discussion between Vidur giving instructions to his older brother Dhritarashtra, and the class will be given by her grace, Vrindavanji Radhika from ISKCON, Philadelphia. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Good
Accept my
morning,
obeisances
everyone.
of Srila Prabhupada.
Please accept mine. All glories to Prabhupada. Welcome.
And it's all yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asatarya Satas Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asatarya Satas Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Gita Govardhan Ki Jai Mayapurdam Ki Jai Vrindavandam Ki Jai Jamuna Devi Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai ISKCON Harrisburg Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Bol All glories the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories Shri Guru and Shri Karanga Hari Hari Bol Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravana Pacharane Nirvishesha Shinivadi Pashata Deshatarane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayana Namaskritha Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Sarasvatim Vyasyam Tato Jayam Adirayat Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So good morning, everyone. Here we are, the 13th chapter of First Canto, verse 21. So I'll say it 3 times and then we can repeat it together. Pitra Bhatra Suhrit Putra Hataste Vigatam Vayam Atmachajaraya Grasta Parageham Upashashe Pitra Bratri Suhrit Putra Hataste Vigatam Yayam Atmachajaraya Grasta Paramgeham Upashase Pitra Bratri Suhrit Putra Hataste Vigatam Vayam Atmachajaraya Grasta Param Geham Upashyashe. Anyone else like to chant?
Piti Bhakti Suhit Putra Hataste Vigatam Vayam Atmachajaraya Grasta Parageham Upasase.
Pitri Pratri Suhrit Putra Hataste Vigatam Vayam Atmacha Jaraya Krasta Paragehamupashashe. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Anyone else? One more person?
Hare Krishna. Pitra Bhatra Suhar Putra Hataste Vigatam Vayam Atma Cha Jaraya Grastaha Param Parageham Upasase.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, we'll do word for word. Okay. Pitra, father. Vratra, brother. Suhirt, well-wisher. Putraha, sons. Hataha, all dead. Te, yours. Vigatam, expended. Vayam, age. Atma, the body. Cha, also. Jaraya, by invalidity. Grashta, overcome. Para Geham, another's home. Upashashe, you do live. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Your father, brother, well-wishers, and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself have expended the major portion of your life. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and you are living in the home of another. Purport. The king is reminded of his precarious condition. Influenced by cruel time and by his past experience, he should have been more intelligent to see what was going to happen to his own life. His father, Vichitravira, died long ago when he and his younger brothers were all little children, and it was due to the care and kindness of Bhishma Dev that they were properly brought up. Then again, his brother Pandu died also. Then in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, his 100 sons and his grandsons all died, along with all other well-wishers like Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Karna, and many other kings and friends. So he had lost all men and money, and now he was living at the mercy of his nephew, whom he put into troubles of various types. And despite all these reverses, he thought that he would prolong his life more and more. Vidura wanted to point out to Dhritarashtra that everyone has to protect himself by his action and the grace of the Lord. One has to execute his duty faithfully, depending for the result on the supreme authority. No friend, no children, no father, no brother, no state, and no one else can protect a person who is not protected by the Supreme Lord. One should therefore seek the protection of the Supreme Lord, for the human form of life is meant for seeking that protection. Dhritarashtra was warned of his precarious conditions more and more by the following words. Om Meganitim Renditya Ginanjana Shalakaya Takshir Unmotamina Tashme Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Yeda Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Datatitvad Badadikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutale Shimati Bhakti Chura Swaminati Namane Snita Chaita Surpaneta Bhagmanam Charasa Plutam Prabhupada Gata Pranam Bhakti Charopanam. So I'll read the translation again. Your father, brother, well-wishers, and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself have expended the major portion of your life, and your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and you are living at the home of another. So here we can see the attachment that Dhritarashtra has to this physical, this material body, this material existence, and he's very much living in ignorance. And we can see that his very, very wise brother Vidura is trying to educate him and inform him about spiritual life, about the coming of this passing of his life, and really taking on the next life beyond this. So his brother Vidura is giving him the scenarios that he himself is blind to, and we know that Dhritarashtra is blind physically, but this is also discussed in the Bhagavad Gita that he's also spiritually blind. So he's blinded to the fact of the soul. He's blinded to the relationship to the Supreme Lord, and this is evidence of that. He's very much wanting to extend his life, even after all the things that have occurred and his own wrongdoings. And this, in reading this and preparing for this class, it really brought me to a couple of points in the Bhagavad Gita that I thought I'd share with you. And one of them is in chapter 16, the divine and demoniac natures, verses 13 through 15. It describes the demoniac behaviors, and really kind of the demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as am I. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. And we can see, in this example, we see some of these traits with Dhritarashtra. He's really thinking, I've schemed, I've lost many relatives, but still I'm going to extend my life. And he's even lost all of his fortunes. He is nothing. He's living on the charity, on the generosity of King Yudhisthira. He's been completely defeated on the battlefield. And so it's only by the grace and the kind-heartedness and compassion of King Yudhisthira that he's able to even stay there. And Yudhisthira, being the soft-hearted devotee that he is, laments that he has put such, that the crews have been put into such a grievous situation. So, this conversation that Yudhisthira had with Bhishma as Bhishma was laying on the bed of arrows is very telling to Yudhisthira's mentality. His consciousness is very much in that place of compassion. He's a devotee of the Lord, and he's feeling sympathetic of the state and the situation for the Kurus. So he does give Dhritarashtra a place to stay. And even later on in this chapter, we can see that Yudhisthira is still lamenting, even when Dhritarashtra quits home. Basically, he leaves, and so we can see that he's Yudhisthira's soft-heartedness is still coming through then. So Yudhisthira is demonstrating some of these behaviors, but we know in Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, we know that the material body is perishable and we can't hold on to it forever. In the 18th verse of the Bhagavad Gita, the translation is, the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharat. So this is Krishna instructing Arjuna to fight, because he's explaining, as Arjuna is facing all of Dhritarashtra's family on the other side. So this is really kind of coming to this full circle. Arjuna is standing there having this conversation with Krishna on the battlefield, saying, I can't fight. I see my family. I see, my uncles and cousins and grandfathers, and Dronacharya, who is a great warrior who trained me, is my teacher. I can't fight them. But, Dhritarashtra is only observing all of this. He's not on the battlefield. He's an old man. He's very sick and he's blind. So he's just observing. He's hearing this being told to him, relayed to him from Sanjaya. But Krishna's telling Arjuna, the material body is sure to come to an end. What he's describing within the material body is indestructible, immeasurable, and is eternal. What's he describing? The spirit soul. So the material body is only just the vehicle to carry the spirit soul, but people like Dhritarashtra are blind to this understanding. And in this purport, Prabhupada puts it so succinctly, the purport to Bhagavad Gita 2:18, he says, the material body is perishable by nature. It may perish immediately, or it may do so after 100 years. It is a question of time only. There's no chance of maintaining it indefinitely. So here we see Dhritarashtra is trying hard to extend his life. But the spirit soul is so minute that it cannot even be seen by an enemy, to say nothing of being killed. As mentioned in the previous verse, it is so small that no one can have any idea how to measure its dimensions. So here, Prabhupada's saying there's no cause for lamentation, because the living entity as he is cannot be killed, nor can the material body be saved for any length of time or permanently protected, right? And in this verse here, Prabhupada is sharing with us that no friend, no children, no father, no brother, no state, and no one else can protect a person who is not protected by the Supreme Lord. Well, what does that mean? So obviously the material body cannot live on forever. Even the greatest of devotees of the Supreme Lord, the material body is material. So the Lord does not extend limitless life to the material body. But what he does is he provides us with a spirit soul. And why do we have a soul, right? What's the purpose of having a spirit soul? Well, the spirit soul serves two purposes. It illuminates the material body, right? And it's also our connection to God. It's our connection to the Lord. So the spirit soul is there as our connection. But if the spirit soul, if the material entity, the jiva, is forgetful of the existence of the soul, and is forgetful of the eternality of the soul, but the finite existence of the material body, they will fall into this place of really begging for their life. Dhritarashtra is essentially begging for his life. He's like, no, I want to extend, even despite all these hardships, despite the fact that I am blind and I am crippled and I have all these ailments. I'm old. I still don't want to die. Because the biggest fear, I would say, probably the biggest fear is we fear death. And this is Dhritarashtra trying to extend that imminent ending, right? It's going to happen. It will come eventually. But he's really trying to kind of wager his bets to see if we can get squeeze a little more time out. For what, right? He doesn't even have any money. He's staying on the kindness of King Yudhisthira, but he doesn't care, because he's still only seeing his material body as his sole existence. And this is because he has not taken to the science of Krishna consciousness. He has not come to the understanding of the true nature of his existence, which is really to cultivate a relationship with the Lord. And going back to the purport in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says the body itself is unimportant. right? As soon as the spirit soul is out of this material body, the body begins to decompose. Therefore, it is the spirit soul which maintains the body. So the spirit soul, it illuminates, it gives life to the body. And Prabhupada has given this example so many times in lectures, but when, medical science is still trying to figure out what keeps the body alive, what is the illuminating factor of the physical body. So some might say, oh, it's the heart. It's absolutely 100% the heart. The heart stops, everything stops. Some say, no, it's definitely the brain. The brain is the illuminating factor. It is what gives life. You take the brain away, life is no longer. You take the heart, and some say, no, if you take the heart away, the heart stops, the life is no longer. So science is debating this, but they still have not been able to prove the existence of the soul, right? So they're looking at the material elements, the material body to justify, to say, this is what gives life. This is what illuminates, this is what gives life to the physical body, to the material body. But Prabhupada points out that they won't find it. The soul is 1/100th of a tenth of, 1/100th of a tip of a hair. That's very small. But the spark of the soul, because it is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is all illuminating to the material body. And so this is where people have out of body, can report out of body experiences or near death experiences. A lot of times you hear these examples of people when they die, they see themselves, their material body, but they can see themselves, right? Is that the brain floating above the body, just looking down, or the eyes? No, it's the spirit, right? This is the subtle body. This is, so here, Prabhupada is helping us to understand that we can't keep extending our material life. We can try. And in this material world, into present day, how many countless efforts are there to try and extend lifespans, even though the lifespan now is so much shorter than even, from, millennia ago. And, we know from reading in the Shastras that in, Satya Yuga, the lifespan was, thousands of years, and now we only get 100 years at most. It's nothing. And we think living to 100 is such a great feat, but it's really not. 100,000 years, 100,000 year lifespan, 10,000 year lifespan, 1,000 year lifespan, and we're down to 100 years here in Kali Yuga. That's not very much. So we're restricted, but we keep trying to extend that. And it's the nature of the human it's the nature of the material body, the material jiva, to want to try and extend if we do not understand our true nature and our true nature as in relation to the Supreme Lord. So and so there is a conclusion, right? So there is kind of a recommendation, let's say. So in Bhagavad Gita 251, Krishna says, by thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in this material world. It is in this way they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. So this is the answer. The material body is temporary. It will die within 100 years for the majority of the people out there. Not 100,000 like it was, not 10,000 or 1,000, within 100 years. So this is imminent. And 100 years is a blink of an eye in the scheme of the universe, in the scheme of a day in the life of Brahma, right? So we know that this is a very short period of time. But here, Prabhupada says in the purport, owing to ignorance, one does not know that this material world is a miserable place where there are dangers at every step. Out of ignorance only, less intelligent persons try to adjust this situation by fruitive activities, thinking the resultant actions will make them happy. They do not know that no kind of material body anywhere within the universe can give life without miseries. The miseries of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease, are present everywhere within this material world. But one who understands his real constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord, and thus knows the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So this is again, this is really the solution to what ails us in this material world. And Vidur is trying to convince his older brother of this, and ultimately he succeeds, but it takes some time. And because Dhritarashtra has done all these dastardly things and cheated his family and waged war, really. I mean, it was his son also that was very adamant about the war, but these were all things that were under his watchful eye, and these things all unfolded under him. And so there's no protection for the person that has not surrendered to the Lord. And this is the fate that Dhritarashtra has brought himself into. So in this is another verse, but I'm sure this verse was discussed yesterday, and so I'll just bring it in very quickly. But in the Supreme Personality of God said, "Time I am the destroyer of the worlds. I have come here to destroy all people. With the exception of you, the Pandavas, all soldiers here on both sides will be slain." So time I am destroyer of worlds is, of course, a very famous quote from the Bhagavad Gita. And, Dhritarashtra is really trying to buy some time, but he can't, because Krishna is Kala. Krishna is the destroyer of time. He is the one that is going to ensure that all is devoured by him. And when Arjuna is on the battlefield and he asks to see the universal form of the Lord, and Lord Krishna gives him the Divya Chakshu, that spiritual vision, Arjuna is overwhelmed because he sees all of his family going into them being devoured by the mouth of the Lord. And this is this very horrific scene. So, Dhritarashtra is already done. Krishna has already decided his fate because of his past actions, right? And Prabhupada makes this clear too. His past actions. This is all, he's already, his path is clear. Krishna has already decided this, and whether he stays there and imposes himself on King Yudhishthira's generosity, or if he quits and goes to the forest, either way, his fate is determined. He will die. Krishna's already determined that. His age has determined that. His ailments have determined that. But how will he go? That's his choice. What is his choice? He can go as a miser, as Prabhupada might call him. You might call him a miserly, person, because he is not accepting Lord Krishna. He's not hearing, he's not understanding his true position. Or he can go understanding that if he leaves, he quits his body, and he can understand and study the nature of the spirit. And those are the choices. That's the choice that any of us can have, right? And this is why we chant japa. And I brought this up in prior classes, but chanting Hare Krishna is really, it's connecting us to the Lord. It's training our mind, though. And I've heard Prabhupada say this in lectures, that we're chanting Hare Krishna to prepare for that time when we die, that we're always getting in that mindset of hearing the Lord's name, speaking the Lord's name, feeling that connection to the Lord. Because at the time of death, if we are thinking about our family, if we're thinking about the wealth that we've left behind, or the house or the job or whatever that is, it's just going to bring us back. It's just going to snap us right back into a material body. So we have to be so careful, right? And Vidur, the very wise brother to Dhritarashtra, is trying to explain to him, you have to be so careful at your time of death, right? And in our entire life, we have to be careful. But really, at the time of death, we have to try and be so careful that we're thinking about the Lord. And this is the beautiful thing when devotees are passing and they're leaving their body, and if they're leaving in a slow enough way that can give the opportunity for devotees to gather around them, as they're leaving their body. What are devotees doing? What are devotees doing when someone's leaving their body? They're chanting
the holy name.
Totally. They're chanting the holy name. And at night, they put the Prabhupada's chanting on overnight. You know, they're constantly chanting, doing kirtan. When Prabhupada was leaving his body 24/7, the devotees were there chanting. And even after he left his body. So this is, this is the true preparation for death. And so, this is what Vidura is trying to convey to Dhritarashtra. Don't waste it. Don't just be here, this miserly person, this dying person, and just waste his last opportunities. Take knowledge, take shelter in the Lord. Go separate from your family, leave that behind. And when you do, then there's, you have a better chance of what your next life will be. Maybe it will be an improvement. And so here again, like I said, Prabhupada is really giving us these understandings of how to prepare ourselves in life and in death. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, in this material world, we can look all around us. And what do we see? We see ways to try and prolong life, prolong beauty, to stay ever young. And even the modern medical system, which has some value to it in a lot of things, but the modern medical system is really, it's trying to kind of just sustain life, prolong life, keep people. And a lot of people may not have even survived if modern medicine weren't in the mix, right? Because some people's lives were just so precarious, but modern medicine is keeping them going. We're constantly extending our lives. And that's fine, as long as we understand what the true purpose of life is. But those who are blinded to the real reason of life, and they're only extending simply for the purpose of more wealth, for the purpose of more time for material activities. And then what is this for, right? And this is the same that Prahlad, right? Prahlad was trying to explain this to his father, right? The demon, he was trying to explain this to his father, and he's telling all these children, he's little boy saying, you have to start when you're young. Oh, when I'm older, I'll focus on spiritual life. But now it's my time. Now it's my time to have fun and have a good time and acquire wealth and live heartily, right? But this is not Prahlad saying, no. Actually, what this is for is you have to start early. Start your devotional life, start your devotional activities, understand your relationship with Vishnu. He's saying, understand this relationship early so that you can have a life that is fully focused in that consciousness. Because the older we get, that sometimes the harder it is too, because we become so locked in our ways, locked in our mindsets. So it can become a more difficult path the older that we start. That's not to say that it's impossible. Sometimes age gives us a sense of not desperation, but sense of urgency, let's say. Sometimes as we age, we can see that urgency of, oh my goodness, I wasted all this time, and now I really need to dive into spiritual life. And if we're fortunate enough to have reached that realization before Krishna takes us, before our life is ended, then this is a good thing. Then we've been given a boon to be able to see that life is meant for Krishna consciousness activities, that life is meant for the development of our consciousness, of development of our relationship with God. So in this time of studying with Bhagavad Gita, studying the Srimad Bhagavatam, we are really taking our understanding of who these great personalities are and how they have come to cultivate their own Krishna consciousness. And so these are things. So, and also in this purport, I'll repeat, one who understands his real constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord, and thus knows the position of the personality of Godhead, engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Consequently, he becomes qualified to enter into the Vaikuntha planets, where there's neither material, miserable life, nor the influence of time and death. To know one's constitutional position means to know also the sublime position of the Lord. One who wrongly thinks that the living entity's position and the Lord's position are on the same level is to be understood to be in darkness and therefore unable to engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. He becomes the Lord himself and thus paves the way for repetition of birth and death. And that's essentially what happens, is that when we think we're the Ishwaras, right, we're competing with the Lord. Whenever we turn our backs on the relationship that is inherently there, but it's covered over, it's blocked. When we turn our backs on that relationship, we're saying, I'm in charge. I want to be in charge, even though we're not, right? We can say we're in charge as much as we want, but the material effects, the effects of karma, the effects of Maya, they are all still very ever present. So we can still say, I am in charge, I am this, I am that, but we're not. So, the atheists, they think everything is kind of just chaos. And atheists do not believe that there is God. They do not believe that there is anything. It's just all chaos. We're just all bumping into each other. It's all just chaotic. And in one sense, I can kind of see how one could come to that understanding. But really, when you look at it, chaos is not organized. But you see organization all throughout the material world. And you see cause and effect, right? There's cause and effect. These are karmic reactions. If things were just complete chaos, there wouldn't be logical, there wouldn't be any logical order to things. There wouldn't be these cause and effects that are occurring. That's not a form of chaos. That is something more divine. There's a divine order to that, because true chaos wouldn't make any sense at all. But if you truly look deeply and look carefully at the material world, you can see, yes, you can say maybe it all looks like chaos, nothing makes sense. But when you look more closely at it, you can see karmic reactions. You can see the kind of the divine and demoniac mentalities, right? Not to say that that themselves are demons or, divine, but you can see these divine and demoniac mentalities playing out. You can see the effects of activities, the mode of goodness, the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion. We can see all of these things carried out in day-to-day life, regardless of where our brain is in terms of our religious or our spiritual affiliation. If you look closely, even science has put order into things, but they say that the order is coming from some sort of scientific process, right? But where is that scientific process coming from? Well, no one knows. No one can figure out where this order is coming from. The scientists have a theory, and I've talked about this before because I just really enjoy looking at the scientific process. And science has a theory, but it very rarely becomes a law because the theories are constantly changing. And they still can't prove that there's a soul. They can't prove that there's God. They can't disprove it either. That's the kicker. They can't prove or disprove. So that leaves them in a bit of a quandary, doesn't it? And there's a devotee in England, Akandadi Das. He does these Atma Paradigm lectures, and I think I've mentioned these before, but the Atma Paradigm lectures that he did a couple of years ago are great, and he's really discussing the scientific perspective on the soul and how science is always trying to relate and connect activities, perception, personality, and they have all these studies and all of these theories, right? None of them are law because there's only one law of gravity. We've got that one down. We know things drop, right? So the law of gravity is pretty well defined. But other than that, we've got a lot of theories out there. But we can't quite figure out the spiritual components, and we can't figure out our own universe, right? Because the Bhagavatam is way ahead of things. It's way ahead of things, and because this Bhagavatam is spiritual. It's Shastra. It's passed down, and so we can draw from that understanding in the Bhagavatam to say, okay, well, I also can't prove that there's God. I also cannot disprove that there's God, but I have the Srimad Bhagavatam. I have faith. I have my own feeling, this connection that I feel I have. We have to, as human beings, as spirit, as material entities, material entities, as jivas, to some degree, come to a place of faith. And this is the first step in the devotional, the processes of devotional service is faith, shraddha, right? That we have to come to some sort of faith. And because if we only use our material senses, which we know to be faulty, this is one of the 4 flaws of the jivas. The 4 flaws is that we have faulty senses. If we only rely on our senses to understand all that is around us, then we're going to be blind, like Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was very much dependent on his other senses. He was blind, but he depended on his other senses, his ears, his all these other senses, but he could not see the truth, the real truth. But if we're only just using our material senses to try and understand all that is out there, and we're not understanding what's within, that we're really coming to this place of faith. And faith is what guides us. Faith is what, at the end of the day, when we're coming to the place where Krishna is calling us, where he's saying, this is the last day, this is your last breath. What are we going to do? Are we going to ask for more time, like Dhritarashtra? Are we going to say, wait, I have some family out there, I haven't visited, or my son, my daughter, my wife, blah, blah, blah. These are hard things, right? These are not easy. These are not easy situations, but we all are going to face it. This is the guarantee in life, right? 100% no money back guarantee. We all will, leave our bodies at some point. And so hopefully we will take the lessons from Krishna and see how not to do it, like Dhritarashtra begging for more time, even though he has nothing at this point. He's lost everything, and still he doesn't want to lose his material body. And so this is the choice. These are the things this is why we have these conversations, and to really hopefully stimulate some thought, look at our own attachments. And they're not easy to we can't just cut ties, right? And that's not the point. That's not the goal. So just suddenly just say, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop talking to my family. I'm going to just go up to a mountain like a rishi and quit life and just only focus on spiritual life, because that's not what was asked of us either, right? Prabhupada made it clear, no, we have to still engage. Krishna said you still have to engage in material activities, but do it for me. Surrender all of your results to me. Don't try and take everything for yourself. Don't assume that it's all of your own intelligence and your hard work that got you to that point. Okay. Dhritarashtra he just put his hand on his stake on everything. It's like, this is my kingdom, this is my money and my family. If we act in that blindness, then we will never fully understand that Krishna is the hand behind it all. Krishna is the doer. So we can't take responsibility. We can take responsibility for our actions, but we can't take responsibility for all the outcomes in our lives, right? We can take responsibility for how we behave, how we think, the actions that we do in life. But when we truly surrender the results to Krishna, we're saying, Krishna, it's up to you how these things unfold. It's by your grace or your mercy that I have this boon, by your grace or mercy that I have this difficulty, that there is no lamentation in difficulty or in greatness coming through our lives, that we can remain equiposed and know that Krishna is the hand for all of it. So just kind of in summation of today's verse, we're talking about Dhritarashtra. He's ultimately being asked to quit home, but he's being reminded of his precarious condition. But aren't we all in that same precarious position, but in just different states? So Prabhupada was reminding us of our precarious position. And he would say, please take to this process. Please take to this process of Krishna consciousness. Why was he pleading with us? Because he's a soft heart. He wasn't, empowered, but he also had so much compassion. He's a soldier of Lord Chaitanya. The compassion comes through. He had the compassion for the fallen souls. That's the Dina Dayal, the fallen soul, the compassion for the fallen soul. He's looking at all of us saying, please take to this process. I beg you. Because otherwise, you'll suffer. Your life will be difficult. It will be difficult. It could be difficult anyway, but when we take to this process, we have surrendered and we can have more peace in our hearts. Bhaktaram Yagita Pasham, right? This is the peace formula. We understand who's in control. We surrender all of our activities, all of our yagyas to the Lord, everything. So I'll take a pause here for any conversation or questions.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for this wonderful class. Actually, as you were giving class, I was thinking how much in the past few verses, Vidur has been talking on the topic of death. Few verses, and sometimes, as you said, it's not a pleasant topic. It's not a topic that we like to hear, but it's a topic of reality. It is going to befall on us when we are not ready. Actually, not when we are ready, when we are not ready, So that was a very nice, realization that, that you mentioned, and even Vidur is repeatedly bringing up in his class, I mean, he can, these verses. So thank you for addressing some really major points. Would like to ask devotees if you have any questions, any comments, any takeaway realizations, please do unmute yourself, or you can post it in the chat and we will be happy to read it, or just sharing thoughts on it will be really nice. Just going down the list here. Yes, Jit Mitra, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I really liked, sorry, I joined a little late, but I really liked 2 points. So first point I liked was, I think it is necessary to be aware of the scientific basis of Krishna consciousness. And this is especially necessary when we try to defend our position in, like, among students or among intellectuals. And we have very strong valid points to defend our position, and there is a lot of scientific data also coming out which proves not the body, or which proves that Darwinism isn't true. So investigating and just being aware of these points are very important, and so I really like the points that you are covering. And the second point I wanted to talk about was actually very recently, just maybe 2-3 days ago, one of my colleagues who is an atheist but an intellectual, he was kind of he was facing an existential crisis, and he started to look towards atheistic philosophers on how they would explain to overcome his existential crisis. And basically, those philosophers came to the same thing that you were mentioning, that there is actually no purpose to life. It's actually called the philosophy of absurdism, which says that there is no purpose to life. You don't have to spend time trying to find the cause and effect relationship among things. And so he was going on and on explaining his findings, and I was listening to that, and I was going like, wow, that's so depressing. As opposed to as opposed to there are many other Western philosophers who are theist, like Stoicism is another Western philosophy which is based on theism. But when you read Stoicism, you find so much hope, you find so much courage to face difficult situations. But you read about absurdism and you go it's so hopeless. So I just wanted to add those 2 points.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, the atheistic philosophy is very depressing. I mean, it's I like just thinking, okay, there's God and he loves me, and I can have a relationship, and that sounds good to me. All that, and when bad things happen, that's okay. Krishna's there with me, and when good things happen, that's okay too. And yeah, the whole there's no cause and effect. Don't try and understand it. Everything's chaos. And just never. I'm like, how can they think that? That clearly you peel back the curtain a little more. You can see that there is cause and effect. It's very evident. It's not chaos at all. So, yeah.
That was a good point. Thank you for sharing that, Jit Mitra. Thank you. In fact, he tried to share that with me. He tried to share that, I guess is a word, or tell me during at a Sunday program, and he asked me, Mataji, you want to hear it? I said, no, not right now. Let me cook. So I didn't get the full story. I said, timing is wrong. So we never got to talk about that. But yeah, thank you. That was so true. In fact, as Jit Mitra was speaking, I was thinking about a short video clip that I was watching on Bhakti Swami last night. And one of it was in English and the other one was in Bengali. And I don't know Bengali, but the one in English, Bhakti Swami was mentioning how many years ago there was a mutt. He didn't mention, he was very careful with his choice of words, that there was a mutt in India that was telling the ISKCON devotees that Srila Prabhupada didn't give you all what you all need to know. And then Bhakti Swami was saying that Srila Prabhupada gave us everything, never doubt him. It's everything. He has given us everything, and never ever let anyone convince you, he says, that Srila Prabhupada did not give us everything. He has given us everything, and that we need to know. It's all there. And so never leave ISKCON because someone says that Srila Prabhupada never gave you anything, or left some things out. He said it's all in Srila Prabhupada's books. Yeah. And then another one with, that the one in Bengali that I did not, because like I said, I don't know Bengali. I was going to ask Jit Mitra, can you transcribe the whole, video clip for me? Because Jit Mitra is Bengali. But I could just pick few words where he was telling the devotees, who made the fan, who made the wood, who made the table, who made your sari? And they all said, Bhagavan, Bhagavan, Bhagavan in Bengali. So he says, yeah, so everything, there is a God, he was saying, there is a God. If, who made the air? Did you make the air? So he was really, stressing the point is there is a God. Mm-hmm. So that was one point that I watched few last night, but these two really stuck with me. Small little video clips,
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I'll definitely try and find those. Yeah.
Yeah, on YouTube, I just typed, I just typed one topic and something came. I said, oh wait, never leave ISKCON. Let me check that 4-minute video. It was really powerful. That
was his motto. I mean, he has disciples make that vow.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I think I don't know whether it's him or Jayapataka Swami. I don't know. One of the spiritual masters, I was told that at initiation, they add the 5th principle is never leave ISKCON after the 4th.
Bhakti Charu Swami.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah. He makes his disciples, after the 4, he'll say, okay, now the 5th is this, never leave ISKCON.
Yep.
So he throws that in is what I was told. I thought that was really awesome.
No, that was at my initiation.
Really? Wow. Amazing.
Serious.
Amazing.
Yeah. He's not messing around.
Nope, he's not messing around. He's definitely not messing around.
For any difficulties that may occur, Prabhupada is, the fountainhead of ISKCON. And so, to never leave Prabhupada, really. Yeah.
Absolutely. Beautiful. It was very nice. Thank you for sharing that, Jit Mitra.
Thank you.
Any questions from devotees? Any thoughts? Any takeaways? Reflections? Realization? Going down the list here. Go ahead, my husband.
Prabhu. Good morning.
Good morning. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Mine, all glories to Prabhupada.
Wonderful lecture. And you yourself ended by saying that Srila Prabhupada has given everything. And the lecture that you had here was wonderful because most of the time you were explaining the purports written by Srila Prabhupada. And so there was a nice flow to it. And that also confirms the fact that Srila Prabhupada has given everything. You can take pieces of purports from different and have a very wonderful lecture, very intelligently given, because the guidance is there from Srila Prabhupada's purports. And speaking about that and about the material world, Srila Prabhupada made a point. And this morning when I woke up, I was thinking about it. My mind is rested on this, and I was thinking about the countries in this world, and some of them are called advanced countries, and some of them are not advanced. Well, that is from a material standpoint. But Srila Prabhupada gave one statement about that. That whatever that we think that we're advanced, or we're living in advanced countries are using, and it's better, we think it's better, it's actually not better. All we're doing is trying hard to counteract the suffering that the material world gives us. We're trying to counteract it, and in that state, we say we are happy. Mm-hmm. So when the cold comes, we have a very nice $200, $300, wonderful winter coat, and somebody may have a $50 winter coat. So then our $300 winter coat, people may admire us when we wear it. But what is it really doing? If we take the coat off, we're going to be cold. The cold really is protecting against bad weather, bad situation of temperature that our bodies cannot withstand. So he said, all through this, some people see they're in skyscrapers, they live in wonderful situations, and the dog that is, in some countries, they just lie on the street, but the sleeping is the same. He just said, it doesn't really change much. All he does is polish the same situation where people are trying to survive here, and we call it happiness. So he explained, I was thinking about this one and said, it's so true. So I just wanted to add that to Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Those are excellent points. And yeah, I mean, that is the condition of, the advanced, the first world country problems. We always joke, oh, that's a first world problem, right? When you're like, oh, my internet's down. Oh, that's such a first world problem, right? But it's so true. I mean, we get used to it too, like we become very accustomed. So then when things get a little uncomfortable, say, oh no, like I was struggling with our internet being down for 2 weeks. We were on and off, like riding the wave, and I work from home a lot. So it's really challenging, but, and that was suffering, to me, that was suffering, and, but in other parts of the world, that's not even an option. So we can very much cover over our suffering to some degree and kind of paint over it a little bit with all these niceties. But at the end of the day, there's still the same, propensity for suffering. So thank you. And
So true.
Dear Krishna Prabhu made a great point. He said, Srila Prabhupada said, even demigods are waiting in queue to get in birth in ISKCON. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, I've heard that from many gurus that, that and their purpose is they want to be part of the Sankirtan movement. They think, and then here we don't, and sometimes when I hear that from devotees, it's so true. And then I ask myself, how much do we really appreciate the Sankirtan movement?
Yeah.
Because I think we take it for granted.
Yeah.
You really take it for granted. Like last night, we were hearing a lecture by Srila Prabhupada. Myself, my husband, and one other devotee showed up, and where Srila Prabhupada said that the best yajna is Sankirtan yajna. That is the best. There's no other better yajna. That is the best and the foremost. And he ends it with that. And that how important it is that we really, that the Krishna consciousness movement is all about Sankirtan yajna. And it's so important that we take it so seriously. So and how, there are, like Dear Krishna was mentioning, there are demigods waiting to, take birth just to be in it. And here we're like, I don't have time for it. It's so real. But yeah, thank you for that point there, Krishna. Thank you. Any other last minute questions before we end the class? Any other comments, reflections, realizations, thoughts coming to your mind? And if there isn't, thank you so much.
Put one more thing in.
Put one comment in there. Yeah.
Just finished one comment.
Oh, yes. Yes, the demigods who have awakened to the, yeah, I like the word he used. He has a good choice of words. Who have awakened to the reality of the suffering in the material world, want to take the shortcut. of living only 100 years and chanting their way back to Godhead. Actually, you know what? That's a good point. Yeah, because in yugas ago, it was like hundreds of years, right? Like
Mhm.
100 is nothing. 100 years, that's nothing. But to us, it's like forever. But
Oh,
yeah, that's a good point. That's a really
Yeah,
good
Thank
point.
you, Prabhu. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Dirkita said that means we are
So fortunate to have this opportunity, Jai.
Yes.
For sure.
that means we are already so fortunate for you have to have this opportunity. Yes, Prabhu. So actually, and because you said that there, Krishna, that means not only are we fortunate, then we have to really take this opportunity like really, really seriously,
Yeah.
So seriously. Yes. Thank you, dear Krishna and Prakshit. Thank you so much for these wonderful points.
Yep.
Yeah, and thank you to all the devotees for joining us. Vanchakrapadivyascha, Kripas, take advantage of it. Yep. Vanchakrapadivyascha, Kripasandabevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Have a
Oh.
wonderful day, Prabhu. Hari Hari
Hare
Bol.
Krishna. Hari
Hare
Bol.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai God, Srila Prabhupada.